So, hello, I'm here at JFocus with Tom Coles. My name is Ixchel Ruiz, and I'm the developer advocate at JFrog. So, Tom,
Yes.
thank you for being here. I'm super excited.
Yeah, me too. It's a bit colder than last year.
Yes, we're missing, it was in May?
Yeah, it was in
Yes,
May.
it was in May. Now we're back in February, which is good.
It's a lot wider.
Yes, but the conference is perfect. This is one of my favorite conferences. But we're here to talk about your session. So
My
tell
session.
me.
I've been traveling around a lot with a session that's not actually technical, which is always a bit of a risk. But before I got into IT, I got my teacher's degree, and I learned a lot of valuable things there that really helped me to keep learning during my career. And at some point, I was looking around me and I saw a lot of people in our industry struggle with keeping up to date with this constant flow of new frameworks, technologies. And I was like, I actually know a couple of things that help me a lot. So maybe if I start explaining these things, then I can help other people as well. And that's basically what my session is about. I have like a couple of test projects that I made myself, a few silly ones, a few bit more serious. Um, and yeah, I just try to help people with the lifelong learning aspect because that's something that's vitally important to our industry to keep learning, but it's also one of the most difficult things to do.
Yes, I mean, I read in some place that like the knowledge in IT has a shelf life of 4 years.
Yeah,
Every,
exactly.
every single time, like every 4 years, we have to reinvent, relearn. But the good
Yeah,
thing is that what you explained in your session, that we can go in increasing the size of our
yeah,
knowledge base.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I encourage you to look for his session because it's very insightful of where should we move next and
Yeah,
what are the pitfalls of mm, picking random dots in the whole universe.
yeah, exactly. I think what a lot of like what you said, the 4 years. So it's between 3 and 5 years, as I mentioned during my session. But that's mainly a select set of knowledge that disappears because there's a bigger set, well, a very important set, and that's the fundamentals. Fundamentals like good test-driven development, good object-oriented programming. If you know those skills, then it's yeah. How long have we been doing object-oriented programming? Since like the 70s, technically. So
Yes.
that's the kind of knowledge that's very valuable to learn. That will take a long time before it becomes irrelevant. But I see a lot of I wanted to say junior developers, but that's not true. It's everyone because we're so chasing the shiny. Like I want to do the next shiny thing, but the next shiny thing are quite often things that like disappear after a year or two. Maybe some things get adopted. Like for example, I thought Docker was one of those shiny things. I was horribly wrong. It's very important now, but yeah, I would say to anyone, focus on those fundamental concepts that are in every programming language, and those concepts don't change that often.
Exactly. That's one of the things that I loved about your session. You're talking about like what is at the core, what will never fail us to
Yeah,
know, and where should we leverage our
yeah,
time and effort, and the other ones are on top. But it's the
yeah,
core values
yeah,
that
exactly.
help us define.
And even when you say they will never fail us, we don't know what the future brings. So maybe at some point, object-oriented programming becomes irrelevant, but it will take a much longer time before that goes away.
But even when we understand that something has changed, fundamentally changed, in order to discover this fundamental
Mm.
change is because we are contrasting it with something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise comes naturally.
Yeah.
So even knowledge that we are setting back or setting aside
Mhm.
is actually helping us to make this educated decision.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't. It's a natural thing, but not a lot of people realize that learning something is basically connecting new knowledge to existing knowledge. So the more of that base layer you create of all these different technologies, the easier it becomes to learn something new. Um, for example, if you've done, I did some front end work recently. If you've done Angular and you suddenly need to switch to React, it's I may be insulting some front end developers, so I'm sorry, but if you know
The Twitter handler is there, so if you want to provide feedback, it's all there.
yeah, but if you look at the core fundamentals, there's a lot of things that are transferable between the two frameworks. And you have to make a Java example between Spring Boot and Quarkus. It's well, there's quite a few more differences, but if you want to get started, it's mainly using different annotations for different things, and a lot of the concepts are basically the same. And
The implementation changes.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yes. So I love the other thing that I totally recommend is your way of documenting your sessions and documenting
Oh,
the Q&A.
that's the first time someone has commented on that for me.
But I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So please tell us,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
so
think that's a great advice to people that attend conferences or any or that is involved in active learning.
yeah.
What you do, it's amazing.
Yeah, so I decided early on, it's quite common for speakers to share the slides, but what I often notice is that the slides for me are basically just stock pictures with a few words on them and some guidance, because I'm telling a story, and those are just to help me get across the story. So sharing my slides is of some value, but not a super lot. So I always make a web page for each session that I give, and that page lists, of course, the slides, but also really detailed about some more details about the code I spoke, and also the Q&A, because I get a lot of questions afterwards, like about how do you do this, how do you do that, and then I just write it all down and add it to the site as well, and that's good for a couple of reasons. One, I noticed that not everyone is as confident to ask questions during a public Q&A, so it can be a private question, but then I still want to share that knowledge with all the other people that were in my session or people that just happened to visit the page. And that's good for them because can share more knowledge, but also good for me because if I get a question like a couple sessions later, then I can just go, oh, I answered that one already quite intelligently. I'll go back to my own Q&A page. And if I get the same question a lot of times, that basically means I need to add it to my talk, because then that's something that people are really struggling with.
And for me, I also noticed that the context where the conference is being held, your audience also changes. So the
Absolutely.
nature of your or the questions also change.
Absolutely.
So when I saw your presentations, your notes, and everything, I was like, this makes total sense.
Have you been implementing it yourself? Not yet.
Working on it,
Okay, okay,
working on it.
good.
But so you already told us what brought us to this session.
Yeah.
So what else is there for you? Like, how do you see this concept evolving? Do you want to continue talking about this?
So, spoiler, I'm going to give you a very exclusive thing because I've not spoken about this. But I actually had a small existential crisis recently. Namely, is my session still relevant with the dawn of ChatGPT? And how does ChatGPT go in the whole flow of how do I keep my knowledge up to date? And my next talk will be, so this talk was called Learning Through Tinkering. My next talk will be Learning Through ... prompting, question mark. And it will basically be, for a part, the same session I do now, so it's more an evolution, but then how do we keep ourselves up to date in this new world where we can ask a chatbot? Do we still have to keep ourselves up to date, or is this chatbot just going to do everything for us? So I'm doing some research on that at the moment, so the session is not finalized, but I hope to get it done by April or something.
Well, my only comment on that regard, there was this, we were in a different country, we were trying to reach our destination, and that was one of the rare days that there was an outage on Google Maps.
Yeah, then
And
you
then
have a problem.
you could see the street, that we were not the only puzzles by where are we? How do we get there? And then, like, looking at our phones in total disbelief that
Yeah.
that was not working.
Yeah, we actually had a similar experience when my wife and I went on our honeymoon to Japan. We were using the Google Translate app, so it overlays the actual translation, and we were in a tunnel in the metro, and the internet wasn't working anymore, and we were like, "Oh, okay, now what?"
Yes.
So I think that's one of the big risks with saying, "Oh, you don't have to learn anything anymore. Just trust ChatGPT." It's gonna be the same thing that happens now if Stack Overflow is down for 5 minutes. The internet, all developers on the internet are in panic. I can't Stack Overflow my questions anymore.
Exactly.
I might as well take a day off because this is not going well. So we need to be very careful with our reliance
On technology.
yeah, on those kind of technologies.
And still building ourselves and our
Absolutely,
knowledge.
absolutely. Because what you don't want is every time you need to do something is to ask this thing. It's like imagine being in a pub and you're having a nice conversation, and instead of having your own thoughts and ideas and memories, every time you want to say something, oh, I need to Google that. Oh, I have something interesting to say. Blah 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 blah. Oh, but what about that? I need to Google that because then the humans become this weird interface for computers, like, and that's not how I see that evolve. I do see it as a
Tool.
a tool.
It should be a
Yeah,
tool.
or maybe even like a sparring partner. But I'm a very anxious to say sparring partner because I'm seeing some companies already saying, "Oh, our juniors when we onboard them." You've seen my other talk about onboarding. Uh, we onboard them and we just give them ChatGPT. They can pair program with that. It answers questions faster than I as lead developer can. But that removes all the empathy, all the yeah.
The humanity.
The humanity.
Actually, the humanity, because we don't learn only by facts.
Yeah.
Actually, for several years, AI had this problem that the way of learning was even unidimensional, and it was not as humans learn, multidimensional.
No.
And so again, if we rely on still unidimension tools, we are robbing of our fellow humans of all the different dimensions that learning and interacting requires.
Yeah, and if you already look at what the pandemic did and remote work, at least for me, almost all my meetings became, this is the agenda, tuck, 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 okay, agenda done, bye, see you later. No social talk anymore. And I'm a bit afraid that if we start over-relying on things like ChatGPT, that part of the human aspect is gonna like fade away a little bit as well.
No, totally agree with you.
But we'll have to see what happens because it's kind of difficult at this point to make a prediction of what it will look like in 5 years. Because on the other side, I also I once had a lead developer that told me, "Oh, you young kids, you're so spoiled by intelligence." In my day and age, when I did my coding in a text editor, I still had to know the API
By heart.
by heart, and that for me, for someone that only started coding a bit later, intelligence is like the most normal thing in the world, and I'm like, why would you ever have to remember
An API.
an API? So maybe this is going to evolve that way. So why do we still have to learn Java if it can generate it for us, and it becomes like a new abstraction layer? You know, that you don't need to know the API anymore, but then the next step.
I think both directions have their value, because on one side, if you have that knowledge here, making the jumps and increasing and leverage on what you already know is faster because you are making those connections. And our brain actually is magical at creating these multi-dimension, multi-space kind of connections.
Yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't happen. I mean, having in my brain some concepts is not the same as having 3 books stacked one on top of the other.
We don't live in the matrix.
Yes.
It doesn't work with like a plug in the head.
Here there's a relationship. Here is only adjacent
No, exactly.
and a tower.
Yeah, exactly.
But I see the future as very interesting, like the challenges at the technological level, at the human level.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the first time where I see both challenges at the same level.
Oh, yeah. It's gonna be quite an interesting time. I'm afraid and also excited about it. Like
Yes.
it's a bit of a double thing.
Yes, because the responsibilities are there for us as developers.
Yeah, in my talk, I also said, be careful when you copy paste things from Stack Overflow because once you copy paste it, it's your code now. You can't say, "Oh, I found it on Stack Overflow, so if it explodes in production, not my issue."
No.
And we're gonna have the same issues with ChatGPT. People over relying on it, copy pasting basically what ChatGPT has burped out, and things are gonna go wrong, and then we will have to learn and adapt again.
Yes.
So.
We cannot be blind or we cannot
Oh no
be
no no
all
no.
trusting.
No, no, absolutely not. That would be a very dangerous state to live in.
Okay. Well, Tom, a pleasure as always.
As always,
As
same.
always, thank you very much for being here and
You're
taking
most welcome.
very much
Yeah,
for talking to the audience.
yeah.